Done.
And awake and avoid fights. But if you happen to have to get in one, and I guess the philosophy also is that if you're competent at fighting, that actually decreases the probability that you're going to have to fight, because when someone pushes you, you'll be able to respond with confidence, and with any luck, and this is certainly the case with bullies, with any luck, a reasonable show of confidence, which is very much equivalent to a show of dominance, is going to be enough to make the bully back off.
Hi. So after my last video, I actually was surprised to see that I got some questions. And I think by far, and thank you all for all your questions and taking the time to leave them. One by a guy, I think his name is George Prout. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Asking how a young female becomes a Jordan Peterson fan. And I thought this was pretty intriguing and maybe something worth sharing. How did I become a Jordan Peterson fan? Well, I think the year was 2015. This was before he had climbed to fame for the whole Bill C-16 scandal. And I had just gone through a pretty crippling divorce. My ex became a drug addict over the last few years of our marriage. And I basically had sacrificed everything that I was, everything that I could to try and help him and salvage our marriage. I took marriage very seriously, and the whole till death do us part thing, and watching someone that you love deconstruct like that, and if you're an empathetic person as it is. Anyway, long story short, YouTube actually played a pretty big role in helping me out. When you feel very isolated and you're going through crisis, having somewhere to turn to where you don't have to be vulnerable or exposing yourself as in a conversation. I just started searching. There was something inside of me that was searching. And I was seeing a therapist at the time to help me navigate all the feelings that were arising as a result. And then I stumbled across Jordan Peterson. I think it was because I was studying atheism a lot at the time. I was going through kind of a crisis of the meaning of God and what God it was, and looking into atheism. And I believe I was watching a lot of Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and Hitch, and maybe Peterson popped up. I'm not quite sure exactly. Long story short, I ended up watching one of his courses and then more of his courses, and it really was his style. See, like I said, I was in therapy, and I had women, and I had people, telling me how I was okay and I would get through it and all that shit. But no one was really honest. And to suddenly come across an individual who is remarkably humble. This is the thing that I think I adore the most about Dr. Peterson, is he's honestly on a journey, and it's not about ego with him. A lot of these great thinkers, even, or philosophers that are around today, a lot of it is ego. A lot of it is, look at the brilliant conclusions that I've come to, or I've articulated, or how much I know and how well I can speak. And with him, it's very much the journey, and it's an honest journey. I mean, to suddenly be speaking so frankly about some of the most brutal aspects of humanity and us, our psyche, the places that we go, the places that we're afraid to go, that was so compelling to me, because it made it noble. You know, he talks about archetypes, and he talks about the journeys that we take, that hell on earth actually is our own inner hell. It's going into the places inside of us that we don't want to touch, the places inside of us that we rejected as children, or that were brutally made fun of, or just incredibly traumatic events that we all went through over the course of our lifetime, bullying, being rejected by our parents, whatever it was. And to suddenly have someone articulate it as being a noble journey, as being something useful. And despite the fact that he talks about it as men, I could relate to this. I could relate to going in and slaying my own dragons. When I started applying Peterson to my life, keeping my room clean, when my own self-talk was replaced from, you're worthless and you deserve this and no one will love you, to be honest, speak your truth, clean out your room, clean out your demons, and don't do things that make you weak. And I applied that as a woman to not talking myself down, to not beating myself up, to not disbelieving and disempowering myself. Quite the opposite. And I watched as my life gradually got better. And this, by the way, is when today, now that Peterson is so popular and there's so much criticism out there, and I'm very careful not to stay in an echo chamber. I will listen to everyone, from the most liberal opinions to Richard Spencer. I've watched lots of his stuff. I think he's kind of adorable in a weird way. Watching him and Styx have their chat about Coldplay, I thought that was so cute, like how passionate they are about music. Anyway, I digress. Once I started applying Peterson to my life, I saw changes. So when I read these people and these articles critiquing him, they are missing the point. Peterson is not so much a theoretical thing. If you read his book at face value, it might even seem a little simple, with glimmers of intelligence there, but it's the simplicity of it that's so genius. How many self-help books have you read, or these beautiful theories about helping yourself, or Zen and meditation? If you apply his perspective to life, you slowly become better. Peterson is not a theory. Peterson is a practice. Anyone can do it. So writing an article discrediting how you translated what he was saying is missing the point. If you actually lived it out day after day and internalized what he's saying, it reveals itself over time in a personal way. And that's why I adore him. I also I think he's so bold and courageous, with so much shit knocking him down, but he knows that what he's offering is valuable and is under threat. And it's not a cult. It's a way of looking at the world that's so sorely needed. And women can do it too. I think women need it too. Instead of this being this man versus woman clash and feminists trying to overpower men, no, we need to embrace our femininity. We need to learn how to be women, but we need to embrace our masculine side too. Like, I am a strong woman, and not in this fuck the patriarchy way. Like, when I sit in a business meeting, I see other women who try to behave like men and be aggressive and be, loud and obnoxious. But I have found that it's a lot more effective, and I'm actually listened to a lot more, and even a little bit more intimidating when I act like a woman, but like a woman who is regal and poised and confident, and at the same time empathetic and understanding. There can be a fusion of these two worlds. So by embracing my masculine and being tough enough to fight my battles and face my inner demons and get all that shit out and learn how to love myself as a result and build real strength. Like, no one can take that from you. When you resolve your shit and you build upon that on stable grounds, and you know who you are, and you're reaching for your potential. To me, potential is God. Potential is the culmination of the highest values that I believe in. And I know that that exists. And I get the same love and I can't even think of the word, but just the way that people cling to this deity that they believe in. When I cling to those ideals, when I know that that's out there, the ultimate culmination of love and kindness and goodness, all to encourage and boldness all together. I know that that high ideal exists in the world, within humanity. That to me is God. When that expresses itself in the world, that gives me faith, that gives me hope and courage. When times are tough, I can feel that, I can sense that. And that to me is the highest, most spiritual, most beautiful expression of humanity that there could be. And that's why I love Jordan Peterson. He got me in touch with that. And I think that all women could strongly gain from it. I think all of humanity could. But like I said, it's not a theory, it's a practice.
You know, this is something my wife has pointed out too. She said, well, men are going to have to stand up for themselves. But here's the problem. I know how to stand up to a man who's unfairly trespassing against me. And the reason I know that is because the parameters for my resistance are quite well defined, which is we talk, we argue, we push, and then it becomes physical. Right? Like if we move beyond the boundaries of civil discourse, we know what the next step is. Okay, because if the man is offensive enough and crazy enough, the reaction becomes physical right away, or at least the threat is there. And when men are talking to each other in any serious manner, that underlying threat of physicality is always there, especially if it's a real conversation, and it keeps the thing civilized to some degree. You know, if you're talking to a man who wouldn't fight with you under any circumstances whatsoever, then you're talking to someone to whom you have absolutely no respect. It's impossible to respect yourself until you grow teeth. And if you grow teeth, then you realize that you're somewhat dangerous, or seriously dangerous, and then you might be more willing to demand that you treat yourself with respect and other people do the same thing. And it seems to me that in this constant protest and use of shame and all of that goes along with this sort of radical movement towards egalitarianism, that there's a tremendous amount of provocation. And God, I'm going to say this too, even though I shouldn't. But you know, I don't believe this, but I'm trying to figure it out. You know, I thought it was absolutely comical when 50 Shades of Grey came out. Eh? I just thought that was just so insanely comical that at the same time, there's this massive political demand for like radical equality and say with regards to sexual behavior, and the fastest selling novel the world had ever seen was S&M Domination, right? It's like, oh well, we know where the unconscious is going with that one, don't we? And sometimes I think, like, because one of the things that I've really tried to puzzle out, and it's not like I believe this, right? I'm just telling you where the edges of my thinking have been going, is that you have this crazy alliance between the feminists and the radical Islamists that I just do not get. It's like the feminists, it's like why they aren't protesting nonstop about Saudi Arabia is just completely beyond me. Like, I do not understand it in the least. And I wonder too, I just wonder bloody well, this is the Freudian me, is like, is there an attraction, you know, is there an attraction that's emerging among the female radicals for that totalitarian male dominance that they've chased out of the West? And I mean, that's a hell of a thing to think, but after all, I am psychoanalytically minded, and I do think things like that. Because, like, I just can see no rational reason for it. The only other rational reason is that, well, the West needs to fall, and so the enemy of my enemy is...
My friend,
exactly. Now, what is it? I got that wrong, but
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yes, exactly.
And that's
and
why
so
Islamists tend to vote liberal as well.
yes, well, so that could be the case. But I'm not going to shake my suspicion about this unconscious balancing, because as the demand for egalitarianism and the eradication of masculinity accelerates, there's going to be a longing in the unconscious for the precise opposite of that, right? The more you scream for equality, the more your unconscious is going to admire dominance. And so, well, that's how you think if you're psychoanalytically minded. And, you know, I'm a great admirer of Freud. He knew a hell of a lot more than people like to think. And so, which is partly why everyone still hates him, even though it's been 100 years since he's